Hey YouTubers, it's Judy from Wildly Passionate, and this week I'm going to do a little bit of where have I been, what have I been doing, kind of overview and kind of a vlog style. So I haven't really been making art per se, but I have been making these books. So I'm not necessarily ready to do a tutorial on how I make these yet, because I think there's some really great tutorials already out there and I'm still learning. So each of these books I'm going to tell you what I learned while I was making it and kind of some of the mistakes I made and some of the tools I use, just if you're curious. But also I highly recommend Sea Lemon. Her YouTube channel is really great if you want to start binding your own blank journals and stuff like that. So all these are blank. They're just journals or maybe sketch diaries, whatever kind of artwork I want to like put in there. However, it's not like heavy duty paper. It probably wouldn't take like paint or watercolors all that well. So these so far are just writing journals for fun. So this is the first journal I made. It's this totally floppy soft cover journal where I used regular laser print paper. It was perfectly white when I got it. I used 11 by 17 paper, so each of these pages is 8.5 by 11, which I really like. A lot of journals I think are too small for me, and they're sort of constricting. And one of the really good things about this journal is that it lays perfectly flat. I used a Coptic stitch to do this one. The other two that I did are what I think is called a kettle stitch, but this one is a Coptic stitch. And I hand aged each page. You can see like how the pages are a little bit wrinkly and they have a little bit of this like dirty kind of aged texture, or not texture but color. So for that I used this Java walnut ink and I mixed it with some water in a spray bottle to dilute it. It's mostly water and like very, very little of that walnut ink. And then it just gives it this nice kind of grungy texture. And so I just think that's kind of fun. This is 100 pages, this book, so it took me forever because I was doing the front and back. So that was essentially 200 pages that I had to hand age. And then I used this pretty cord as my bookmark. See if I can get a close-up right there. And so that is this roll of white and gold ribbon, or whatever you want to call it. And then for the cover I used this gray upholstery leather. I think it's real leather. I got it on Amazon, but it has this really soft kind of webbed backing. It's like a fabric. And I found with this that I could iron it. I used like a heat transfer iron-on type glue. You can see it sticking out here, which I'm still struggling a little bit with the iron-on adhesives, but I didn't have like a hot glue gun or anything, and I was afraid to use the PVA that I have, which they use this in bookbinding a lot, because I didn't think it would be strong enough. So you have to be really careful when you're ironing the leather because it can burn and melt, and you'll see that in one of my future notebooks that I totally burnt the leather and ruined it. So I haven't decided yet if I like the iron-on method for this particular kind of leather, because it does leave some bumps and it's not perfect looking. However, it is really strong. So I don't know. This edge I did with the PVA glue, and you can see how it's a little bit more round versus where I ironed it. It's very thin. So still haven't decided entirely what I like that for. And then I should mention, underneath here I made my own book press, which Sea Lemon has a tutorial for that too. It's just 2 cutting boards that you run a bolt through them, and then you have these little twisty wing nuts to tighten. And it's actually worked so good for all my book projects, just to keep them flat after I glue stuff. Here is the second journal I made. This one is smaller. I used this paper from Amazon, aged parchment. It's 8.5 by 11, and I just folded that in half. So that's the size I have. This one, you can see, it fights me a little bit to lay flat, but I used a kettle stitch, and so it's supposed to lay pretty flat. However, I think what I did wrong here is I didn't make this spine quite big enough, and I didn't leave a big enough gap in between the chipboard of the spine and the chipboard of the front cover, because it's hard, and so it's kind of tight right here, and so it fights me. But for this one I used vinyl that I got on Amazon. This is just black vinyl. It's a little bit more inexpensive, and it has this kind of felt backing. So for this one I used all PVA glue to keep all the edges glued down, and it actually worked really well. So I would not recommend ironing this. I think I ironed some portion of it and it started to melt right away, so I stopped doing that. And I added some pretty end paper on this one. On this side I have some stripes, and then in the back I have this kind of, I don't know what you'd call that, but that kind of pattern. I still want to get this more flat, so with PVA glue it's kind of tricky to get things perfectly flat. Still learning on that. And I just wanted to mention for the book corners, if you're curious what these are from the Tim Holtz Ideology corners. They had sort of a silver color like that, and then there's this sort of gold color, and then there's this reddish bronzy type color that I haven't used for anything yet. But I do really like these. However, I wish I could get a lot more of them because I'm hoping to start selling journals on Etsy. So these are kind of expensive. They're like $7 or $8 for 3 sets. So yeah. And for the covers for this, I used a chipboard that I got on Amazon. Pretty much everything I got on Amazon because I love Amazon. And it's this medium weight in natural. And I got the 12 by 12 because I do like making the bigger journals. This small one's sort of just an experiment, but I do like the bigger journals. So this medium weight is pretty sturdy. I don't know if I would ever really need anything more sturdy than that, but that's what I used. And then for the binding, for every one of these I've been using binder's thread by Line Co, just in case you're curious, and a curved binding needle. I just used a flame to kind of curve it myself just a little bit, so that when you're coming in and out of the stitches, it's just a little bit easier to grab. Okay, and now for my third journal, which I used the same gray leather that I used before. It has this really nice pebble texture on it, which I love. And I used the aged parchment paper, but in the 11 by 17 size, so I have 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper as my pages in this one. So this one's really nice and uniform looking. I just love kind of the parchment look. However, I did run into some accidents and mistakes when I was ironing the leather. So I thought this leather could hold up to the ironing a little bit better. So I just went ahead and planned on ironing every edge over, and you can see this major mistake here. I was putting a piece of paper over the leather, and then I would iron over that, and in a couple places I just basically melted the leather, and then the paper got stuck onto the leather, and so it was pretty much a disaster. However, I'm not going to be like selling this particular journal, so it doesn't super bother me because it's just for me, but in the future I think maybe I'm just going to stick with the PVA glue. Or if you guys have any other suggestions of glue that dries kind of fast and it could be used for leather, I need those suggestions. I didn't add any fancy end papers to this one because basically I was impatient. I definitely learned a lot from this one because I did something even different with the spine here, where I used this jute rope as 5 kind of cords along the spine, which you can only kind of barely see here, but instead of cutting a piece of chipboard for the spine to make it hard like this one, I left it open and exposed, and then I just ran this jute from like a hole in the front chipboard to the back chipboard, which takes forever because you have to fray out the ends of the jute so that you can glue them down pretty flat, because otherwise on this inside you would be able to see it because the ends of the jute are in here. You just can't tell because I flattened them out really good. But that takes a while to do. So this one was more time consuming. However, I really just like this subtle kind of bumpy spine, and the fact that it's flexible means the book will lay flat super easy. I really like almost everything about this journal. Again, I used the gold and white cord as my little bookmark. I don't use bookmarks a lot, so I know some people put multiple ribbons in there and stuff. I just personally don't use them. Definitely this part kind of bothers me, and I wish I just had stopped using the iron and gone for the glue right away, because it takes longer to glue because you have to kind of hold it while it dries. I use bobby pins sometimes, but it's just kind of time consuming. So I'm thinking maybe I'll use like a hot glue gun or something if that doesn't melt the leather. It's a little crooked too, and I had to kind of cut the edge of my chipboard because my corners weren't lining up perfectly. So definitely the biggest struggle I've had with all of my journals is getting the text block, which is what all this paper is called, to match up and line up with my covers so that it's like an even edge around the corner, because you can see it's just kind of wonky right now, which, I mean, might not necessarily be a huge problem, but for the perfectionist in me, it definitely bothers me. And there's more of that paper that got, I guess, welded to the leather here. So I was thinking maybe about covering it with some ribbon, or like just take a big black piece of felt as kind of like an inner cover, but it doesn't, if I pull it all the way out to the edge, you'll kind of be able to see it when it's closed and it'll look kind of weird. So I don't know, I still have to figure out how to line everything up. I think I need to get like a T-square and a triangle and just be a little more precise when I'm cutting my covers and gluing them. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how busy I've been, just experimenting. And you know, I don't really want to give a tutorial on this because I still feel like I'm a beginner, and I'm still learning things, but hopefully I'm going to get a little better in the future and I can start selling these on Etsy because I really like making them. So if you have any suggestions for, you know, good bookbinding tools or tutorials or YouTubers, just let me know, leave it in the comments below, and maybe if you'd like to see a specific type of journal or something in the future that I might be making because I'm still experimenting, leave that down below too. And if you like bookbinding yourself, let me know. Thumbs up this video, and I will see you next week, hopefully, with another video. So take care and stay passionate.